Hey, friend, and welcome back to Knit Your Stress Away. If you have ever wanted to knit, but somehow ended up doing laundry, answering emails, scrolling your phone, we talked about this, but you're not alone. Life is super noisy, super full, and packed with distractions. But what if we could create little pockets of time just for our knitting? Just for our knitting craft, our practice, and even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes at a time, where we can take a breath, we don't feel distracted, and we actually grab those needles and not just say that we would, right? This is what we're going to talk about today on this episode, and I'm going to walk you through some super practical ways to ditch the distractions and make more space for focused and calming knitting time. Super ready to get into this episode. I hope you guys are too. Grab a pen if you want to jot down some notes, and I will see you in this episode. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away, the podcast for overwhelmed moms who are done with doom scrolling and ready for something slower. Hi, I am Nadine. I am a mom, a knitting coach for beginners, and proud screen time dropout who believes that peace starts with just one stitch. If you've ever craved a quiet moment to yourself, this show is your cozy permission slip. Let's trade notifications for needles and turn stress into self-care together. Okay, we're going to start with being completely honest about distractions because we just have to name them, right? So it is what it is. Distractions are literally everywhere. And honestly, I feel like it gets worse with time because there are just more things that are pulling at us in all directions. But definitely, the media, the social media, the technology that just seems like it gives us more freedom and more ways to connect, but it also takes time away from us and adds more distractions to our life, right? But it's not just the phone. We talked about that quite extensively on past episodes as well. And for those of you who were part of the Phone Down Needles Up Challenge, it was a fun week that we had back in April, where we actually spent 5 full days of creating boundaries on our phone and on our screen time so that we can make more time, for our knitting craft. But there are other distractions in our lives as well. So there are dishes, there's a to-do list. And I feel like literally that to-do list just keeps growing. Doesn't matter what we do. Last night I was awake making more to-do lists, like just thinking about things that I had either forgotten or that were new that came up and that I hadn't written down yet, and I'm worried I forget it. So that thing keeps growing and growing and growing, right? The kid who comes home and forgot about a school form that is due, it can feel like knitting always gets pushed to the bottom of that list or of the things that tug at you, that take over your life. But here's a mindset shift that I want to offer you today. Knitting as your hobby, your reset, your self-care practice does not have to be all or nothing. In other words, you don't need an hour of uninterrupted silence, no matter how dreamy that actually would be, right? I mean, we can all dream. What you do need is a plan and a few easy tweaks that make picking up your needles feel more natural and very easy. So what you need is to just remove the barrier and tweak a couple things here or there. Mainly your mindset, thinking, oh, I need a whole hour or 45 minutes or whatever to sit on my couch and have quiet time so that I can actually work on this knitting project. Not true. So let's debunk a couple of things and let's come up with a couple of ideas that can help you grab your knitting more often. All right, let's start here. What is your current go-to when you do get a quiet moment or a seemingly quiet moment? Because oftentimes there's no, this quiet moment just fell into my lap. As a busy mom, usually we have to make that. But if you do plan to have a few minutes, what is your go-to activity? For a lot of us, it is still grabbing the phone, right? Or we grab the phone when we don't want to do something. That's a whole nother thing. It's like, that pile of laundry. As a matter of fact, right now, as I'm recording this, I'm looking at my pile of laundry, and it doesn't appeal to me. I don't want to do it. So oftentimes I grab my phone instead. But what if we trained ourselves to actually reach for our knitting instead of for our phone in those moments? So here's the thing. You're going to be like, well, I can't knit when there's laundry to do. Sure. But should you grab your phone and scroll when there's laundry to do? So I personally say it's probably better for you and your mind if you actually grabbed your knitting instead of your phone, even though there is laundry to do. Get the laundry done takes probably 5 to 10 minutes, honestly, if it's not 15 baskets that have piled up. But if it's just a one little basket, the one I'm looking at right now could be done in less than 10 minutes. So can get that done really quick and then still grab my knitting instead of my phone, right? But here are just a few ways to make grabbing your knitting project and something that actually benefits and relaxes you easier than just reaching for the phone. Because that's the problem, right? The phone is the easiest thing to grab. It is very satisfying to grab the phone and get a quick dopamine hit from social media scroll from someone who messaged us, from an email we got. All those things are easy to do. They don't require a lot of energy on our end, at least not in the beginning, to do. So thinking about, I could also walk over to the living room, to the couch where my knitting project is, and grab that. That takes too much time and too much energy. So we have to remove the barrier and we have to make it super easy to choose one over the other. So what you want to do is, number one, you want to keep your current project visible and within reach. So don't tuck it away. Don't put it in a basket around the corner of your couch in the last, nook and cranny of your living room. Maybe have it in the kitchen, which is the place that you find yourself most during the day. So for me, that is usually the kitchen, and then my kids' school in the basement. So I have my knitting in a bag that, walks with me through the house. So when I'm in the kitchen area, I have it hung over a chair, or when it's a small project, I have this tiny little basket bag thingy that my best friend made me. It's actually customized, which is the cutest thing. It has my name on the front. And it says in German, Nadine's knitting basket. I love it. So I have that one for small ones, but it always is somewhere around the kitchen or maybe even the dining room table. And then as I go downstairs to the school with my kids, I take the whole thing with me. And it's always next to me. So that makes it a little bit easier to remember, grab that instead of your phone. And then also have your tools ready, anything you might need, scissors, tapestry needle, stitch marker. So you're not hunting any of that stuff whenever you really need it, because that creates another barrier, because you're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I would grab this now, this knitting. But if all your other tools that you remember, I'm going to need to weave in some ends here soon, and they're not there, then you may say, oh, you know what, never mind, I'll just do it next time. So have everything ready to go inside that project bag where your actual current project is also sitting. Okay. And for me, and I may have said this in the past, so if you guys have been around for a hot minute on this podcast, you have heard me say this, but keep a project very simple. In other words, make all the complicated ones that you like, but for the sake of a 5 to 10 minute knitting session where you're like, okay, I'd rather do something for my well-being right now versus scrolling, you need something that's easily accessible and that is easily picked up and put down, not having to think, oh my gosh, where was I in this pattern? What color am I on? What row is this? And you have to look, and that in itself takes you 5 minutes before you can even start. So you need at least one project on rotation that you have where you can just say, you know what, I can grab it, I can knit one row super quick, and then I can drop it again. And next time the same thing is possible because it's very repetitive. Okay. So those are the 3 things that I think make it super, super easy to have your knitting accessible in a way that actually challenges you to not pick up your phone. So it turns your knitting into your default habit, which your brain, it actually needs it to be as frictionless as possible. So make it as simple as you can for yourself. In the challenge, in the Phone Down, Needles Up challenge, we actually talk about having your project quite literally sitting either next to your phone or even on top of your phone, so that you have to look for your phone. And in the process of looking for your phone, you find your knitting project and you're like, yeah, look at that. That is such a simple trick, but you may not have thought of it. So hopefully this helps. Number 2, reduce the clutter and the noise. Let's talk about setting the vibe. If your space in your home is cluttered or noisy, it is very hard to settle into a relaxing kind of a rhythm or a self-care ritual, right? So you can try a few things here so what happens, right? I always tell my daughter when her room is messy, she's a teenager. So I always tell her, hey, normally, they say that when your surroundings are reflected in your mind or the other way around, meaning when you have a lot of clutter and a lot of things that your brain is taking in around you and you're looking at it over and over and over and you're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, that's all still sitting there. I still need to put this away. I still need to. It creates so much mental chatter and clutter, but it does it over and over and over about the same things. And it can become not only annoying, but also very exhausting, right? So your brain is expending energy just thinking about the same things again and again and again. And there's no solution other than getting rid of it, getting rid of that clutter and making sure that things are somewhat put away to where your eyes can relax, your brain can relax when you walk through your house, right? And in order for you to kind of create this knitting routine or ritual, you might want to put a few things in place. So you can create a mini knitting nook. It could be a corner of the couch with a nice little pillow. It could have your little basket of supplies or maybe your extra yarn that you have. And you need to make sure that you have good lighting, because there's nothing worse than sitting down somewhere and being like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then you can't see your stitches and you're like, oh, this sucks. Guess what lights up? My phone. And then you grab that out of your pocket. Another thing is keep your phone on either do not disturb, or here's this new thing that I personally, it's on the iPhone. I don't know how this works on any other phones. I apologize. But on the iPhone, there's something called focus time, and you can create different focus filters, meaning that for a certain time of the day, you can actually create this schedule where you reduce the interruptions or the notifications, with the exception of maybe emergency ones or, people that you need to reach you, like your parents or your in-laws or your kids or your family in general, or maybe your kids' school, things like that. But if your phone is set to those settings where you have a do not disturb or a reduce the interruptions with notifications set, then you can, kind of guilt-free put that phone aside and it's not even going to go off, so you don't have to worry about it. And even if that's just a 15-minute schedule and you say, you know what, this happens every day after I clean up from the dinner rush, or maybe it happens every day right before you pick up your kids from school if you're doing that. So for me, oftentimes I try to work in about a 15 to 30-minute break for myself with reading or knitting, like right before dinner, because I come from the school time, then my kids might still be doing school. And then I start dinner and, the whole cleanup and evening routine. And I try to work in a little bit of extra buffer time there for myself. So I have a schedule set there where I'm not getting interrupted by my phone. It really, really helps. And here's another thing that you can try to make your knitting very appealing and very cozy and relaxing is, if you love music, you can try a playlist or an audiobook instead of your screen. So the goal is always fewer interruptions and more peace. So if you have maybe some calming music, or I have this cool playlist on my Apple Music called Reading. So it's created so you can read to it. So it's very calming, very sort of quiet. And I put it on with my my AirPods. And I put it on, oh my gosh, what is it called when you can't hear any surrounding sounds? I can't think of the word, but you know what I'm talking about, where you have your headphones, you can't hear people and you can only hear the music. And that for 15 minutes, either then reading or knitting, is just so amazing. So amazing. Of course, if you have little kids and they're running around, that may not be possible for you because you still need to hear them. But you can do this as soon as someone else is with the children, and you take your 15 minutes of complete quiet and just have music on and knit or, read, whatever you want to do. But we're specifically talking about creating more time for knitting today. So let's focus on that. But the thing is that you don't have to overhaul your entire life, but you can work these things in little by little and just create this little space where you can go and say, you know what, this is reserved for me taking 10 to 15 minutes of quiet time, of knitting time. And it also kind of signals to your brain that when you go to that place, that's when you relax, right? So do that over and over again. And eventually your brain will actually know, oh, this is only for this quiet time and this self-care time. So if you do want to knit more consistently, you can also pair it with something that you already do. So it's called habit stacking, and it would be one trigger that you already have ingrained in your daily routine that then triggers this new habit, which would be 5 or 10 minutes of knitting. There are very easy ways to do this. And let me give you 3 examples here. Your morning coffee or tea. I only do tea. You might know this about me, but I did drink coffee like a Gilmore Girl. I always joked, but it was actually kind of true until I was feeling way too wired and couldn't relax anymore, so I had to give up coffee. But now I'm drinking tea and I actually love it. So your morning coffee or tea, pair that with 10 minutes of knitting. Just 10 minutes. That's about how long it might take for you to finish that cup of coffee or tea and just sit down and knit. I'm hoping that you're taking 10 minutes to actually enjoy that cup of coffee. If you're not, that might be your very first step in general. Right? That is a goal for every mom, especially of very little kids, to have that one quiet, peaceful cup of coffee. But if you can actually pair that with knitting and make that kind of a routine, I think that would be such a fantastic combination. You can also say, you know what, as soon as I put my kids to bed or they go to bed or as soon as I finish, the cleanup in the kitchen, there is no other thing in between that happens. I will wind down with 15 minutes of knitting before I do anything else, whatever that might be. Your, evening routine in like skincare or watching a show with your husband or whatever it might be that you're doing at night, work that window in and make it, a natural follow of a habit that you're already doing, like cleaning up your kitchen. Okay. And the third example would be waiting in the car if you pick up kids from school. I honestly would even encourage you to leave 5 minutes early so you have an extra little bit of time buffer that you can use for knitting. And it just kind of twofold, right? Because it makes you on time if that's a struggle for you. And ask me how I know, because it was a struggle for me when I was still picking kids up from school. But now that I think about it this way, I would have, and back then I wasn't knitting and I wasn't reading much either, which is crazy to think right now that was actually what I was doing or not doing. But if I would have the outlook of 5 to 10 minutes of quiet knitting time in my car and putting rows on my project, I would have so left earlier. So it wasn't very appealing to me to just sit in the car line and looking at my phone. So I was always late and I was always the mom who was like in the back of the row. But I can totally see if that would translate into knitting time that I get for myself, I would totally be on time. So maybe this little part didn't relate to you at all because you're like, yeah, I'm always like the first one in the row. But I forget to take my knitting project. Maybe you still got something out of this tip. But if you're stacking your knitting routine or habit onto an existing routine, it definitely can help it become more second nature. Because I just know so many knitters out there who text me on Instagram all the time and they're like, I know how to knit. I just never work it into my schedule because something else always comes up. Another thing that I want to mention here is if you are one of those people who are like, I know how to knit, I don't need the beginner help, but I do want to work it into my life more often and somehow it just doesn't happen, I want you to kind of question why it's not happening. Is it truly not happening because you have so many things going on that it always falls off? Because it's this luxury that you kind of think you don't deserve? Is this kind of like feeling like an indulgence and you're like, oh gosh, I can't do anything for myself until everything is done. And obviously everything is never done, so I never knit. Or is it maybe because you are knitting something that might be beyond your skill and you just feel a little more defeat than you feel encouragement while you're knitting? That is a possibility. And if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not making progress, or this is really hard to follow this pattern, or I keep making the same mistake. And in that, you kind of turning yourself off of wanting to do the knitting. So it's naturally getting pushed to the side. If that's the case, I highly recommend try a different pattern, start something new, see if you get excitement from starting something else. I have definitely had people tell me this as well, where they're like, oh my gosh, I will never finish this project. This is so boring. And then they say, but I also never work on it. When I'm like, well, it doesn't sound like you're very excited about the project. So find something that you're more excited about so that you are naturally thinking, yes, I want to do this. And of course, the first problem where you may not feel like you're actually deserving it, that one is a mindset shift that can take a little while to get out of your internal story, because it's literally just that. It's a story that we're telling ourselves that we aren't, deserving of sitting down by ourselves and having that quiet time to ourselves, because there's always someone who needs us, who needs our help. Something always happens. But it took me a few years, to be honest, to get out of that mindset and out of that spinning wheel up there that kept telling me that I need to finish everything before I sit down and do something for myself. So I literally never did anything for myself, because everything is never done. There's never a day where you're like, oh my gosh, today I finished everything. Unless you have very, very low expectations, which I know you don't, because you are a busy mom and you have very high expectations of yourself. So this is a natural thing that we tell ourselves. And we just have to, with affirmations and continuous repetition of telling ourselves that we do deserve a break and we do deserve rest, and this little ritual and, self-care tool and this hobby for ourselves, in order to truly believe that. So that may be a little bit of a process, but let me be the person to tell you today that you do deserve it, and that not everything has to be done before you sit down and actually take that break. So here's your permission slip today. And speaking of permission, I'm going to give you another permission to keep it simple. Like we just sort of talked about, the distraction, when the distraction is actually internal. So I touched on it a little bit. It's almost like your hobby is not valuable enough for you to use your time on it. But I can tell you that it 100% is. You are creating, you are relaxing, and you're giving your brain a break from the constant noise. And that is extremely powerful, especially as busy moms and women. If it seems too trivial to spend your time on, we have to change that mindset, right? So you're making a garter stitch dishcloth, or you're making something super simple, right? Those 5 rows before you go to bed, they count. They are enough, and they are helping you to create something amazing with your own hands, and they're helping you relaxing, giving your brain that break that you need, right? And you do not, please hear me when I say this, you do not have to earn this time. You already deserve it without having earned it. And by the way, you're earning it every single day with all the things that you're doing. So don't tell yourself, oh, I just can't. And I have too much to do. Then we have to rethink your actual priorities, and yourself, your well-being, your self-care should 100% absolutely be one of the first priorities on that list that you have. That is your priority list. Okay. So my little tip here at the end is to choose a distraction reducing idea that I gave you in this episode and try it out. So it could be setting up your knitting space, right? It could be making your knitting more visible in your home and maybe placing it on top of your phone if you need to, so that you have to quite literally search your phone and finding your knitting in the process. Pair it with your cup of coffee in the morning, or just commit to 5 quiet minutes with your yarn and start there. 5 minutes. You can do this. And as you're doing that, you're going to grow into the habit of adding more and more time to it, because you're going to feel that not only you do deserve this time, but that it actually helps you feel so much more yourself and so much more at peace. And once you get to that point and you realize, oh, this is why, you do naturally want to do more of it, right? And you'll be so amazed at how much those small shifts can really add up and do for you. If you want any support or accountability for any of the above, I would love to invite you to join us in the free Facebook community. All the moms are in there. They totally get it. I have so many moms who come into that group and they're saying, yeah, I can knit. I just need to work it into my life. Just like I said earlier, we're in there together and we're here to help you. So come on, join us over there. You can find it at theknittingmamas.com/group. And if you're just getting started with knitting, first of all, congratulations for listening to the entire episode. You are on your way of already, getting ready to work that into your life and into your day once you get the hang of it. But if you're like, I don't know where to start, I have a free cheat sheet for you that you can download at theknittingmamas.com/start. It is the 3 things you need to start knitting. It has my favorite tools and yarns inside of it. You get the links, you get the extra tools that I also recommend, and you have a full glossary page in there that helps you through the knitting lingo, which you may be like scratching your head about. So it takes care of that. You can print that, put it in your yarn bag, download the free cheat sheet at theknittingmamas.com/start. That's it for today's episode. I will see you next week, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Keep knitting! Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best.